He remembers your coffee order. He remembers the name of the dog you had when you were 9. He remembers the exact scene in the exact movie that made you cry 3 years ago. And he brings it up sometimes, carefully, like a man holding something that could break. And there's one room in him you have never once been allowed into. You know the room I mean. You've stood outside it. You've felt the draft come out from under the door. It isn't that he's cold. Cold would almost be easier. It's that he's warm, and he's paying attention, and he's clearly, unmistakably in love with you. And still there's a place in him where the lights are off and the door doesn't open, no matter what you say, no matter how safe you make it, no matter how long you wait. And here's the part that makes you feel a little crazy. You can't point to it. If a friend asked what's wrong, you'd struggle to explain, because on paper, nothing is wrong. He shows up. He's kind. He'd probably take a bullet for you. But you've had the experience, maybe last week, maybe last night, of lying next to a man who loves you and feeling somehow alone in a way you can't justify and can't shake. So let me tell you what he's hiding, because it isn't what you think. It isn't another person. It isn't that he loves you less than he says. It's stranger than either of those. And by the time we're done, you're going to understand exactly why his love can be completely real and still feel like it's reaching you from behind glass. There's a specific thing in that locked room, and it explains almost everything. Because here's what it costs to guess wrong about this. You can spend years, and I've watched people spend decades, building a whole theory of a man out of the one door he won't open. You decide he's emotionally unavailable. Or you decide it's you. Or you decide this is just what love turns into after a while. And you make a small, quiet peace with a distance that was never actually necessary. And there was a moment. One specific moment in your relationship where you watched that door begin to close. You were there for it. You'll recognize it by the time we're about 12 minutes in. And when you do, it's going to reframe the whole thing. So this isn't a video about decoding a secret, because what you're looking at isn't a secret at all. It's a wound, and it's shaped like a door. Let's start with what you've already tried, because you have tried, and it hasn't worked, and I don't think that's your fault. The first thing almost everyone does is reassure him. You love him harder. You say it more often. You turn yourself into the safest possible place, figuring that if he just knew, really knew, how much he was loved, the door would open on its own. And it doesn't. It can't. Because reassurance is aimed at the wrong problem. He already knows you love him. That was never what was locked. The second thing you try is the opposite. You ask, straight out, what are you thinking? What's going on with you? Talk to me. And you watch something shut down in his face, and you can't understand why a simple question landed like a threat. Here's why. When you point a flashlight at the door doesn't feel safer. It feels found. And a thing that's spent 30 years not being found does not respond to being found by opening. It responds by getting quieter. You already know the scene. It's late. You're both in bed, lights off, and you can tell from his breathing that he's awake. So you ask, soft as you can, hey, what are you thinking about? And there's a pause, a little too long, and he says, nothing. And you both know it isn't nothing. You know it. He knows it. And you know that he knows that you know. And you've got a choice in that half second. Start a conversation that turns into a fight about a room neither of you can name, or let it go. And for the 9th time, you let it go. You say, okay. You roll over. And something small in you files the moment away with all the others. When reassurance fails and asking fails, most people land on a third explanation. And it's the most dangerous one, because it feels like humility. You decide it's you. You're too much, too needy, too intense. You want too much closeness, and if you could just want less, he'd give more. I want to be careful here, because this one is seductive, and it's almost always wrong. And it's dangerous for a specific reason. It's the only theory that lets him off the hook completely. If the problem is that you want too much, then nothing in him has to change. That's not humility. That's you volunteering to carry something that was never yours. Here's what I want you to sit with. You are not being shut out because you failed. Read that twice if you need to. You're being shut out because you got close. Closeness is the thing that trips the lock. And once you see that, everything reorganizes. Everybody treats this as a communication problem. Better words, better timing, the right book. Jung would have told you you're both standing at the wrong door entirely, and he spent 30 years mapping the right one. So here's what Jung understood, and it's simple enough to say in a sentence and deep enough to spend a life on. Every one of us builds a face to meet the world with. Jung called it the persona. The word comes from the mask actors wore in the old theater. It's not a lie. Exactly. It's the version of you that's useful, presentable, the one that gets you through the meeting and the dinner party and the first 3 months of dating. You have one. I have one. Nothing wrong with it. The trouble starts with everything the mask can't hold. Because whatever doesn't fit the face, whatever's too much, too soft, too frightened, too hungry, it doesn't disappear. It gets pushed down and back into a place Jung called the shadow. And here's what people get wrong about the shadow. They think it's only the dark stuff, the anger, the cruelty, the ugly impulses. But for a lot of men, the very first thing exiled into the shadow, before anything else, was tenderness, the need to be held, permission to be afraid out loud, the whole soft interior of a person, which a boy learns, somewhere very early, is not safe to show. Jung wrote a line I think about constantly. He said the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. Sit with that. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. Real intimacy isn't an exchange. It's a chemical reaction. It changes you. And a man who learned, long ago, that being changed is dangerous, that being truly reached means being altered in ways he can't control, will guard that reaction at its source. Not because he doesn't love you, because he does, and that's exactly what makes it dangerous. I've started calling it the sealed room. Every one of these men has one. It's the single room in the whole house of himself that he keeps locked. And here's the part that matters most. Locked not from you, locked from himself. He doesn't have the key either. He built the wall when he was too young to know he was building anything, and then he grew up around it, and now his whole life, including his love for you, arranges itself around a room he can't walk into. Once you understand that, this stops being a story about a man keeping something from you. It becomes a story about a man carrying something he can't put down and can't open. His love is real. It's just flowing around the sealed room, around it, and never through it. And you've felt that. The love arriving at you slightly bent, slightly rerouted, warm but somehow never landing all the way. That's not your imagination. That's the shape of the wall. Let me ask you something before we go deeper, because I've noticed people split almost exactly down the middle on this, and the split says something. When someone you love goes quiet and pulls back, when you feel that door start to close, what does your body do? Does something in you move toward them? Reach out, try to close the gap. Or does something in you pull back too? Go quiet. Leave the room first before you can be left, toward or back. Just write the word below. I read them, all of them, and the pattern in the answers is its own kind of psychology, because whichever one you just picked, it's already telling you which door you keep trying. And in a few minutes, you're going to see why one of those doors stays shut, no matter how hard you knock on it. Picture him at 9. Not the man. The boy. Something happened, maybe once, maybe over and over, where a feeling came up in him, something soft, fear or grief or need, and he showed it the way children do, wide open, and the room went cold. Maybe he was told to toughen up. Maybe he got laughed at. Maybe nobody said anything at all, and that was worse. And in that afternoon, or that year, he learned a lesson so fast and so deep he never even knew he learned it. That feeling is not safe here. And he did the only thing a child can do. He built a room for it, closed the door, and walked away. And he's been carrying that room ever since, into his friendships, into his work, and now into a bed he shares with you. So the sealed room is real. Here's the question that actually matters: what he put in it, and why it explains something about your relationship you've been quietly blaming yourself for. Here's the thing about what's in that room. It doesn't stay in the room. That's the mistake. Thinking the sealed part is sealed away, off in a corner, not touching anything. It's the opposite. What's locked in there runs the whole relationship from behind the wall. You've been living with its effects the entire time. You just didn't know what you were looking at. There are 4 ways the sealed room shows up in how he loves you. I'll take them in order, because they get harder as they go. The first 3 are about him. The 4th one isn't about him at all. It's about you, and it's the one nobody sees coming, including the person it's happening to. The first one looks like generosity, which is why it's almost impossible to catch. He gives. He fixes the thing, plans the trip, shows up when your car dies at midnight, handles it, whatever it is. From the outside, it looks like devotion, and part of it is. But watch what he does with love versus what he lets himself receive. Doing is safe. Doing keeps him useful, in motion, in control. Needing is not safe, so he becomes the one who gives, endlessly, competently, so he never has to be the one caught wanting something. Love as service. It's real love. It's also a very good place to hide. There's a man I think about. Call him a composite, because he's 100 men. He plans the whole anniversary trip. Flights, the hotel with the view, the restaurant he called ahead about. Flawless. And on the plane, white-knuckled, terrified of flying, he says nothing. His partner finds out years later that he'd been scared of flying the entire time. He could give her the trip. He could not give her the sentence, "I'm frightened." That sentence lived in the sealed room. He wasn't lying to her. He didn't know either. The second way is the one that hurts most in the moment, and it's this. You finally reach him. Some night, some conversation, the walls come down for an hour and he's there, really there, and it's everything you've wanted, and you fall asleep sure that something shifted. And then he's gone. Not physically, but for a day, 2 days, there's a coolness, a busyness, a quiet retreat, and you're left wondering what you did. You did nothing. This is the most predictable thing in the world once you see it. The room felt the draft. It got close to opening. And it resealed hard, because closeness is exactly the alarm it was built to answer. The retreat isn't a rejection of the closeness. It's a reaction to it. Here's what that looks like from your side. You had the best night in months. He told you something real, about his father maybe, or a fear he's never said out loud, and you felt the ground move, felt him come all the way into the room with you for once. You woke up, happy, and by dinner the next day he's answering in single words, half a foot further away on the couch, and you're running the tape back trying to find the thing you did. There's no thing. You're hunting for a mistake in a place where there isn't one. What you're watching is a man who scared himself by being real, and who is now, on a level he can't see, punishing the closeness for having happened. The warmer the night, the colder the morning. That's not a glitch in how he loves you. For most of his life, it was the whole operating system. The third way is stranger, and it's pure Jung. The thing he can't stand in you, the thing he criticizes, the "you're too needy," the "you're too emotional," the "why does everything have to be a big talk?" Very often that's not about you at all. That's the exact feeling he locked in his own room. And when he sees it living freely in you, out in the open, unashamed, it's unbearable. Jung said everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. When a man flinches at your openness, he's very often flinching at a mirror. And that's the moment I promised you at the start. The moment you watch the door begin to close. Go back and find it. I'd bet almost anything it was a moment when you were most open, when you showed him the softest, most unguarded version of you. You thought you were being too much, and he pulled back, and you learned to bring less, but you had it backwards. He didn't pull back because you were too much. He pulled back because you were showing him, in the flesh, the exact thing he'd had to bury in himself to survive. Your openness was a mirror. And mirrors, to a man like this, are the most frightening object in the room. If that just landed, and I mean the uncomfortable part, the part where you recognized a real night, not the flattering part, then do one small thing. A like on this is what puts it in front of the next person, lying awake at 2 in the morning next to a door she can't open, blaming herself for a wall she didn't build. That's the whole reason it matters to me, not the number. The next person, because there's a 4th way this shows up, and underneath the 4th one, is a harder question that changes who this whole thing has actually been about. Here it is. Over months, over years, without ever deciding to, you learned to shrink around the sealed room. You stopped asking about certain things. You stopped reaching at certain hours. You learned which subjects made him go flat, and you started steering around them, gently, automatically, the way you step around a hole in the floor you've walked past 1,000 times. You told yourself you were giving him space. And some of that was kind. But somewhere in there the truth gets harder. You didn't just run into his defense. You became part of it. You started guarding the room too. Two people now, keeping one door shut. And the loneliest part is that you got so good at it you forgot you were doing it. I know how all of this makes him sound. Closed. Withholding. Like the problem. He isn't the problem. He's a man guarding the one part of himself that never got to grow up. Using the only method a scared child ever found that worked. That's not villainy. That's grief with the lights off. Which raises the question almost nobody asks. What if that room isn't locked to keep you out, but to keep something in? And what if the way most people try to open it, the reaching and the asking and the loving harder, is the exact thing that welds it shut? So there you are, on the outside of a door, having slowly, quietly become someone who doesn't knock anymore. That's the bottom of this. And I'll tell you something strange about the bottom. It's also the exact place where the thing finally starts to turn. Here's the turn, and it's going to sound like a letdown before it sounds like a relief. You can't open the room. Not by force. Not by decoding him. Not by the perfect conversation. Not by an ultimatum. Not by loving him so well that he finally feels safe enough to hand you the key. I know that's not what anyone wants to hear. Everyone wants the technique, the right words. There aren't any, because the room was never built to respond to being reached. Reaching is the alarm, so the work isn't picking the lock. The work is three quieter things, and the first one is just seeing the whole pattern, the generous distance, the retreat after closeness, the mirror, and seeing it without blame. Not he's broken. Not I'm broken. Just, this is the shape of a wound, and here's how it moves. The moment you can see it clearly, something loosens, because you stop taking the wall personally. It was never a message to you. It was built before you existed. The second thing is acceptance, and this is the hard one. Letting the wound be a wound instead of a flaw you're trying to fix. There's a specific kind of relief that comes over a person when they stop trying to change someone and start actually seeing them. You're not lowering the bar. You're putting down a job that was never going to work, the job of loving a man out of his own history, and picking up the only thing that ever helps, which is being a place where the history isn't dangerous anymore. And this is where that harder question answers itself. The wall isn't aimed at you. It's aimed at a feeling he was taught, at 9, was fatal. You can't take that feeling out of the room for him, but you can stop being one of the reasons the room feels necessary. There's a difference between knocking on a door and simply being someone who's clearly, calmly, unthreateningly there, near the door, not demanding it open, not leaving either. But I have to be honest with you, because this is the part people skip. Even seeing all of this clearly is not the same as being let in. There's exactly one thing that actually opens the sealed room, and it's almost the opposite of everything you've been trying. I'll tell you what it is in a moment. First, the thing I promised you at the very beginning, what he's hiding. It's not a person. It's not a lie. It's not that he loves you less. What's in that room is the part of him that never learned it was allowed. Allowed to need, allowed to be afraid out loud, allowed to be held without earning it. His love for you has been real this whole time. It's just been leaking out around a wound he can't name. The complication was never deception. There was never a con. It was grief, sitting in a dark room, waiting to find out if it was safe to come out. And a man so used to the dark, he forgot the room even had a door. Here's what it actually looks like when it starts to give. It's not dramatic. It's tiny. It's a man who, one night, instead of vanishing after a moment of closeness, stays, says one true sentence. I don't know why, but that scared me, and doesn't die of it. The room doesn't fling open. Nothing that big. A window cracks. A little air moves, and he notices, some part of him notices, that he said the dangerous thing and the world didn't end. That's the whole beginning. One sentence, one survived sentence. Nothing about the door has changed. Everything about how you're standing near it has. And that, not the knocking, is the thing he's been waiting, his entire life, for someone to finally do. So let me show you the other side, because it exists, and it's worth being honest about what it does and doesn't look like. A man who starts to open the sealed room doesn't become someone else. That's the fantasy, that the guarded man turns into an open, effusive, endlessly expressive partner. That's not it. He becomes whole, which is quieter, and much better than that. The change isn't that he suddenly talks about his feelings all the time. The change is in the texture of the love. Less performance, more presence, less almost, more arriving. The retreats get shorter. The 2-day disappearance becomes an afternoon, then an hour, then a look that says, I need a minute, I'm not gone. The nothing when you ask what he's thinking becomes, I don't have the words yet, but stay. The endless fixing and providing loosens its grip, and underneath it you start to find something you'd almost stopped hoping for. Not a man who serves you, a man who lets you see him, sharing instead of service. It's completely different weather, and that one thing that opens the room, here it is. It's being witnessed without being fixed. That's it. Presence with no demand attached. Not decoding him, not rescuing him, not waiting, coiled, for the door to open so you can rush in. Just being someone in whose company the feeling is finally, for the first time in his life, not dangerous. A person can't be pried open. But a person can, very slowly, next to someone who isn't trying, decide on his own that it's safe to come out. That's the only key there ever was, and the cruel joke of it is you can't use it as a key. The second it becomes a move to get him to open, he feels the pull, and the room seals. It only works when it's real. I watched this happen once, from the outside, and it was so small you'd have missed it. A man said something hard, mid-sentence almost by accident, and then braced, waited for the flinch, the fix, the well have you tried, and the person across from him just kept looking at him the same way they'd been looking at him a second before. Didn't reach for him, didn't reassure him, didn't do anything, and you could see it hit him that nothing bad was going to happen. That's the whole mechanism. Not being met with a solution when you finally show the wound. Just being met. Picture the ordinary version. Not a breakthrough. Not tears. Not a big night. A Tuesday. Coffee. The two of you not managing anything. No performance running underneath. No room being guarded on either side. A silence in the kitchen that's full instead of careful. His hand that doesn't pull back. That's the whole prize. Not fireworks. A door, left standing open in a house where nobody's trying to break anything down. But here's the part I won't dress up, because you deserve better than a pretty ending. This can happen, and he can still choose the room. Wholeness is available to him. It is not owed to you. You can become the safest, clearest, least demanding presence in the world, and he can still decide, over and over, that the dark room is where he'd rather live. Knowing that difference between what you can offer and what you can guarantee is the most loving thing this whole idea asks of you. It's also the most self-respecting, and those two are almost never as far apart as they look. So let's go back to where we started. The man who remembers your coffee order and keeps one room locked. I want to turn the whole thing around now, because there's a last piece, and it's the one this was actually about. You have a sealed room, too. Everyone standing outside someone else's locked door is guarding one of their own. The person who spends years trying to reach a closed man is very often someone with a closed place of her own. A room where her own need lives, the one she keeps quiet, the one she'd never say out loud because saying it feels like the most dangerous thing in the world. It's easier to try to open his. It's a way of standing right next to the exact fear you can't face in yourself without ever having to open your own door. That's not a flaw. That's just how the psyche protects itself. But it's worth knowing. So here's the question I want to leave you with, and I genuinely like your answer. Not because it's a nice way to end a video, but because writing a thing down does something that just thinking it never does. What's the one room in yourself you keep locked, even from the people you love most? One line is enough. Put it below. You don't have to explain it. Just naming it, in writing, in front of strangers who won't judge you because most of them are carrying the same thing, does more than you'd expect. And if you want the next one, where I want to look at what happens when two people's sealed rooms fall in love with each other, and what it takes to open both at once, subscribe, and it'll come find you when it's ready. Whatever you decide to do about his door, knock, wait, walk away, stay. The one that's really been waiting this whole time is yours. And it's been waiting a long time. It's patient. It isn't going anywhere. It's just hoping, quietly, that one day you'll be the one who finally stands near it without trying to break it down.